the story of Abraham's home, where the conflicts all began, the roots of today's conflicts. His son Ishmael, the ancestor of the Arab and later Muslim world. His son Isaac, the ancestor of the Jewish world. We'll soon be reading about another set of brothers, Esau and Jacob, respectively, the ancestor of the Western Roman Christian world, and Jacob, respectively, the ancestor of the Jewish world. But we're still in the episode, the story of Ishmael and Isaac and their conflicts. And I discussed it in the previous program and programs, so I'm not going to go over that, but basically it comes down to the biggest battle of all. How do we reconcile between a person's selfish needs and a divine mission, a transcendent mission? Because indeed, we have two souls, we have two voices within our psyches. One is about me, me, me. We use the Freudian id, my pleasure, me. Somewhat kept at bay by the ego and superego, or using other psychological schools of thought, different language. But there is that, the survival of the fittest, social Darwinistic idea. But then there's another voice called the transcendent voice. That's not about me, it's about some higher cause, something greater than myself. And there's a struggle, there's a battle between these two forces. It is, in a way, you can say, a battle between God and existence. An existence that can be very self-absorbed, driven by self-interest, or an existence that is God-centric, instead of ego-centric, God-centric, mission-centric, let's call it. And then everything changes. Then, even though we may be diverse and we have different opinions, but life is all about something greater than yourself. All wars, all battles, all will originate from the sense of self, me. My way is better than your way. You're a threat to me. Survival of the fittest. And you need to be either eliminated or controlled or in some way subjugated. The root of all wars. Take the self aside, suspend yourself for a higher cause, then you enhance me. It's actually the differences between us that is so precious, because it allows me to experience something greater than myself. So those are in subtle terms. Take that to the farthest conclusion, and you could have the most brutal, the most obscene, the most disgusting behavior from one human being to another. And that is what the war is about. And it began in Abraham's home because Abraham introduced God to a pagan world. Pagan simply means a selfish world. Absorbed by their own interest, absorbed by their own egos, absorbed by their own arrogance, by their own power and control. Abraham recognized and pioneered a new path, a path of love, a path of kindness, of generosity, of selflessness. And he taught this to his children. Ishmael, his child with Hagar, and Isaac, his child with Sarah. But it's not that simple. When you're dealing with the passions of faith and the passions of virtue, and you see someone that is behaving in a more, let's call it, materialistic or decadent fashion, it's hard for you to tolerate. Interesting Talmudic story that the great sage and mystic Rabbi Simon Jacobson, known as Rashbi, fame of Lag BaOmer, there's a special day that celebrates his passing, because that's what he requested. So he had to escape the Romans, because they had decreed that anyone that studied Bible, studied Torah, that was considered to be death penalty. It was a threat to them and their belief systems, or non-belief systems. So he had to escape and hide, and he hid for 12 years in a cave with his son. And being that he was away from civilization, away from the mainstream, Wall Street, he became extremely refined in his studies, in his meditations, in his life experience. So 12 years later, finally he hears they can come back. Either the Roman Empire had died or the decree was off. But now, coming back, he was so disoriented when he saw a world that's involved with pettiness, with nonsense, playing games, to the point that the Talmud tells us that whatever he looked at began to burn. Literally or metaphorically, it meant that he couldn't tolerate. His spiritual intensity was so strong, he couldn't tolerate. God tells him, no. You're destroying my world. Yes, it's in the name of spiritual purity and integrity. But I created a world to be transformed, not to be destroyed. A world that to be healed and inspired, not to be annihilated. He says to him, go back one more year. At your own volition, not because of the decree. And refine yourself even more and mature yourself to a point. And that's what happened. One more year, and then he came back spiritually even more mature. And this time, whenever he saw something that was a problem, that was petty, that may be decadent, that may be corrupt, may be selfish, everything he saw that was that way, he repaired. He found a way to heal it, to repair it. So you would think he was on a higher level after 12 years. No. Because he could not integrate his spiritual integrity with the materialistic world. He grew to a higher state of consciousness, and then he was able to do that. Similarly, Yishmael picked up the passion for the divine. However, in a way that was too aggressive. Wild is the way the Bible puts it. No boundaries. It's going everywhere. And you indeed see that, certain features of that throughout history and today as well. 9/11 we saw it, as well as what's happening now. I'm not trying to suggest that these brutal murders are coming in the name of God directly, but in some distorted, obscene way. It's the belief that the Western world, the Judeo-Christian Western world, essentially what is perceived in a completely false way by some of a conspiracy of materialism to fight what God wants, so it has to be eradicated. So it's not even seen as murder, it's seen as cleaning up the world in the name of God. That is not the way. Yitzchak, Isaac, second son of Abraham, he taught the way discipline. You need discipline. You don't overwhelm people, even with your fervor and zeal and passion. You need to inspire. You need to internalize and integrate. So it begins with subtle difference, seeming like a subtle difference, but it can end up becoming total war. And you see, if you think in history, the wars between the Christians, between the Muslims, between the Jews, all fighting over what? The center of the universe, Jerusalem. A sense, a subconscious sense that everybody has, that something there, the vortex, the portal, the gate between heaven and earth, as the Bible puts it. Jacob called it the gate to heaven. A place where there's an interface between the divine and existence. And that's a very fragile place, because to make sure there's balance, that requires a real, intense work. It's much easier for one to overwhelm the other, like we see in our own personal lives. So one of the ways we fight the battle individually on a spiritual war front is to create balance like that and harmony within our own life. Every subtle conflict between your materialistic interests and your transcendent ones is ultimately some form of battle between the Yishmael and Isaac within us. Those archetypes. And what's the end of the story? So we read this week's Bible chapter, and it says that finally Yishmael, after Abraham passes away at age 175, you find Yishmael passes away at 137. And both Yishmael and Isaac bury their father Abraham. And we're told that Yishmael did tshuva, he repented his ways. He learned through his experience. Through being banished from the home of Abraham, he matured as well and learned, and therefore is considered to be someone that was a righteous son of Abraham. And then we're told about his pedigree, about his children. The children of Ishmael, And the chapter concludes, only to lead right immediately. Then we start hearing about the children of Isaac. Says the Baal HaTurim, one of the classic commentaries on the Bible. What's the juxtaposition of the children of Ishmael to the children of Isaac? Which is us. You can say which is the confrontations of our time. It says, because it's referring to that at the end of days there will be battles that Ishmael will wage against the Western world, against the Jewish world. And then that will lead, the children of Ishmael's battles will lead to the victory of the children of Isaac, and with the ultimate personal and global redemption. That's what the Baal HaTurim writes. And it's based on many different sources, including the classic Zohar, about the battles at the end of time. So what does this tell us? It's not just interesting facts, that there's an inner narrative. We all wish it could have come much more peacefully. And it will end up being that way, because the world will ultimately make its peace with God. The Christians, for many millennia, were extremely aggressive, to the point of fighting for God with the sword, the Crusaders. First Crusade, the Second Crusade. But then they matured. They learned that you have to integrate. The United States is a perfect example. Many of the Western countries today are an example. Doesn't mean we have a perfect system, but institutionalized, that all human beings are created equal. We all have inalienable rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom of religion, etc. That's what created a thriving community. There was no totalitarian despots controlling everything. A balance. But that balance can be very tenuous. The battle between religion and faith and modernity, religion and science. We need both. One cannot eliminate the other. You need both. You need passion. You need faith. You need a cause, something transcendent. And that, my friends, is the bigger picture. Now I know when you're hearing about blood being shed and refugees being held, and that which we've seen in the last few weeks, horrendous, and still bodies not identified, and open graves, and the blood is still warm. So you could say, what am I pontificating here about philosophical ideas? Because we're all connected. Even if we're not in that region, those battles are waging and raging within ourselves, and we need to do something about it. Because ultimately that's the lesson. I firmly believe that if we could get through to all the individuals involved and all the nations with that message of Abraham, that the way is integration, not destruction, not annihilation. Even if you are a complete zealous person of God, it's not a holy war that you can wage. That's not the way we do it. We do it through inspiration, through love, through kindness, through motivation. All that is the way of God. That's the way of Abraham, who is the father of all nations. So that, my friends, is my report from the spiritual war front. We're waging it. Hopefully, with technology, we can create a butterfly ripple effect, and this message can reach not just a few people, but millions, billions of people. And together with a grassroots effort, I have no doubt that we can create a synergy that will erupt in the greatest spiritual revolution we've ever seen. Because that's the final frontier. After the agricultural revolution, and the industrial revolution, and the computer revolution or information revolution, the ultimate is the spiritual revolution, where we learn to integrate in a seamless fashion spirit and matter. The divine and transcendent within existence, integrated, internalized. May we be blessed to see the fruition, to see the realization of this dream, not as a dream, but as a reality. And may each of us do our part in creating that integration. That is where we're up to in the biblical story. But there's more to come. The plot thickens. Everyone be blessed with love, with peace, both here and everywhere in the world, especially in Israel, in Gaza, and all the surrounding areas. And may we be blessed, as I said, to see with our own eyes the realization of this total fusion. Be well. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson, Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. We have /War in Israel. You'll find a wide array of resources that we're constantly updating, new videos, new articles, new resources, new tools to find clarity, direction, guidance, hope, confidence, courage. And please be in touch. Love to hear from you. Feedback, thoughts, comments, suggestions, and please share. Subscribe to our growing YouTube channel and share with anyone you come in contact with. Let us create a true brotherhood and sisterhood that will lead this grassroots spiritual revolution. Be well.
Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Gira musica, gira e non si ferma, come una galla do vento aità. Attira con narina, tamburello e abbacia come sua figliola. Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Sinni e tunu, i voti si danno, tu na poco gli peputia. Sinda fettunu, i cappotti russi e si ricordano da notti buona. Scattamo stanotti, vini come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla.